This is my screencast-o-matic video for assessment number 1 with the topic of classroom assessment, decision making, and performance assessments. First, I define what a performance assessment is. It requires students to do something with knowledge, such as making something, producing a report, or demonstrating a process. In other words, you want them to show you what you know, not just simply taking a multiple choice test or a true-false test. There are two components that go into a performance assessment. First, the performance task itself. You have to be clear in what you're assessing. Second, you need a clear rubric for scoring based on stated learning objectives. If an activity lacks the scoring rubric, then they do not qualify as a performance assessment. Next, we have classroom assessment decision making. There are many decisions that go into creating a classroom assessment, but this video is focusing on performance assessments. First, you have to decide what type of performance assessment you're going to do. One type of a performance assessment is a structured on-demand task. In this kind of an assessment, the teachers give specific instructions and the students know that they are being assessed. Another kind of assessment is naturally occurring or typical performance tasks. That means that the test is given in a natural setting and the students may not know that they're being tested, so that's something to think about. And you can't control the setting, so you may have to wait to be able to test that way. Another type of classroom assessment are longer term projects. This means that it is beyond pencil and paper, and it could take a month, it could take the whole semester, it just depends on what project it is. And you could also use that as an individual project or a group project. And then the last type is simulations. And that are controlled conditions where you're designed to mimic a naturally occurring event. Other decisions that you have to make are identifying which objective you are assessing them on. You may assess more than one thing. Different standards or different things may be able to be connected, so you may be able to assess on more than one at the same time. You also have to decide the criteria and identify it for your students. You need to tell them what they're looking for, what you're going to be looking for in their work. They need to be able to know that. You also need to decide on different levels of achievement. Define what must be achieved at each level and make sure your students know. You need to know if you're going to assess the process or the product. In other words, do you want your students to use a specific process, or are you just focusing on what the finished product is and maybe they can take 2 or more different routes to get to that final step? And finally, you need to know how much time is needed to perform the task, and are you going to allow them to work in groups or work alone? Maybe they'll work in groups for part of the assignment and by themselves on the rest, but that's all something that needs to be decided beforehand. The scoring for a performance assessment can either be done by rubric, rating scale, or checklist. A rubric is a set of criteria for students' work that includes description levels of each performance quality. And I have an example of a rubric right here. It's kind of blurry, but you can see what it meant about defining what is expected at each level. So, like at level 4, I completed all of my work. At level 1, I completed just a little of the work. That way the students know what they need to do in order to get the 4. Another example is a rating scale. A rating scale assesses the degree to which students have attained the achievement dimensions in the performance task. A rating scale is useful for evaluating work habits or learning skills. And that I have an example of that one too here. As you can see, the scale goes from 0 to 5, and it tells you, how close you are to perfect. The last scoring type is a checklist. It consists of a list of specific behaviors, characteristics, or activities, and a place for marking whether each is present or absent. And I have an example of that one also. So as you can see, after the student completes each one, they can check it off. So the checklist is good for the teachers and the students to use.